All right, next video talking about non-specific immune response. So, starting out talking about first slide here, day in the life of a desk. Now, this is for real. Like the stuff that I see in my classes, like kids sneeze on their desk all the time. Kids are like, yeah, drooling on their desks. Seen it. And then freaking kids eat right off of it, like the next period. And I'm like, if you only knew, like the kid that was there before you and what he was doing on that desk, you would not do that. So we come in contact with things all the time that could make us sick, but that doesn't mean it will make you sick. So that's kind of the point of this. So first off, when we start talking about non-specific, understand we're going to get into a little bit about the lymph system, how the lymph system works, because this non-specific immune step also triggers the next step, which is going to be creating specific types of like white blood cells and antibodies to fight off like specific kinds of infections. But the first thing is you come in contact with these things and like what your body does. So first line of defense is really about keeping things out. So that's going to include stuff like your skin, your mucus, your saliva. And then if stuff makes it in, like let's say you have a cut on your finger, or you know, if you get a chance to watch the video on Friday, and the lady is in the elevator and somebody sneezes and she breathes in the guy's mucus droplet, which is always one of my favorite things. Then what happens? So, all right, non-specific. First off, like I was saying, we have all these things that keep invaders out. Our environment, like right now, I'm drinking my tea. A little bit hot, hot, hot. Well, on my cup, there's probably stuff on there, different types of pathogens. Okay, even though we washed it, but we come in contact with things all the time. Like I am touching my table, my phone. Oh man, I bet there's stuff on my iPhone 7. But most of the time, it doesn't make us sick because we have a way of like not actually letting it invade our cells. Second layer is certain kinds of white blood cells known as macrophages, which will like swallow up anything that comes in that shouldn't be there. Um, the inflammation response. So, like, let's say you get a cut on your finger. I got a cut. Whatever cuts your finger, right? There's probably bacteria on that. Well, white blood cells are going to flood the area, which we'll talk about. Macrophages, which try to swallow up and eat that stuff before it makes you sick. And then it starts to swell and get red. Okay, that also brings more blood and more of these other white blood cells to the area. And then if your body can't fight it off, you have this third layer, which actually becomes your immune response. And this is going to create things like lymphocytes and antibodies. So that's going to be the next set of notes the next day. But if you look at the bottom here, both of these are part of your lymphatic system. So you have like we all know, like you have like veins and arteries and like capillaries that move your blood around. Well, you also have all these other tubes known as your lymphatic system. So you have like lymph nodes. Like so, if you go to the doctor will feel underneath your neck if you haven't been feeling well, see if your lymph nodes are like swollen. So you have this, it like filters stuff from your blood and it goes through this lymph system, these tubes, through your lymph nodes, and it's part of this immune response. So we'll talk more about that. And again, I love the video. Like I thought about watching the video on Screencastify and just like talking the whole time, but I don't know. We'll see. Maybe I'll do that after all. So first layer of defense, keeping the bad guys out. The skin. So the skin is an amazing organ. It comes in contact with stuff all the time and keeps things from actually getting into your cells and damaging them. You have layers of your skin. Okay, we used to talk a lot more about this, but understand it's kind of like your suit of armor for this world that we're in. that is like full of like different things that can make you sick, pathogens. Your mucus. All right. So most people think about mucus, they think about like blowing their nose. Well, on a windy day, or like if you're a baseball player and you spend time out on the infield dirt, like stuff flies up and it gets caught in your respiratory system. Well, within your respiratory system, there's all this mucus, and the mucus kind of catches it before it hopefully gets into your cells. So like obviously like dirt isn't necessarily going to make you sick, but if there's stuff in the air, in the dirt, um, that can actually get into your mucous membranes, which are cells, and then those cells get infected with the virus. So remember, viruses they need your cells in order to reproduce. That's why right now we're all hearing about wash your hands, kids, wash your hands. Well, I like to think everybody was washing their hands before all, the coronavirus stuff. But if you have stuff on your hands, then you touch your eye or your ear, or you know, some people pick their nose. I'm not to say any names right now. Um, you're now pushing those viruses up closer to your mucous membranes, which is the area that um, they want to invade. Like they can't invade your skin cells. Like that can't even necessarily like invade like cells in your mouth, stuff like that. Like other viruses can. Like you probably heard of like herpes and stuff like that. But the bottom line is they need to find their way up there, and some of these might be so like find their way, and you actually breathe it in. That's why everybody's wearing the masks. But you can only control what you can control. So that's why they're talking a lot about doing things that like washing your hands extra and being extra aware, and like hand sanitizer, stuff like that, is to try to destroy those viruses and stuff before they actually can find their way into your mucous membranes. Antimicrobial proteins. Yeah. So we actually do create just like proteins that are trying to create an environment. So like you come in contact with things, it can't grow on it, which is pretty cool. All right. All right. So let's say you get poked by, I don't know, thumbtack or something sharp. Well, I guarantee you there's stuff that's living on the edge of that thumbtack or on the edge of that paperclip or rusty nail. So what happens is, like it's showing you here, the first thing you want to do is these white blood cells find their way, known as macrophages, to swallow them up. And if they can take care of it and kill them off, you're not going to get like super sick. But your body realizes, hey, we need more of these in the area. We need more these phagocytes, and it actually brings more blood to the area at once, so it swells up. And then the capillaries also are able to, because they have all this extra blood and they swell, they have the ability to have these white blood cells now come out of your bloodstream and go into and attack these foreign invaders. So inflammation is actually kind of important. The white blood cells, like I said, and a lot of times, like you'll actually start seeing like white pus and stuff. It's like what a zit is. Like your 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 hair follicle gets infected with this like oil and stuff, which you normally produce. But if it gets infected with a bacteria, your white blood cells are going to go attack it, which actually creates the pimple. So like it'll swell up. You'll get this white pus. Like you're not supposed to pop it, by the way, because then all you open yourself up to more infection. But all that white bloods, all that white stuff in there is pus from these guys right here that are killing off the bacteria. Fever. Fever is also another one that's a non-specific defense. So the idea is we are, let's say, 98.6, which is kind of normal. Like depending on who you talk to now, it's oh yeah, yeah. Not actually, not everybody's 98.6, which I get, but a lot of these pathogens like have evolved to be at our body temperature, our normal body temperature. They don't do well when it's warmer, nor do our own cells do well when it gets warmer. So remember, we have specific enzymes in our body that work at specific temperatures. So the idea is if your body recognizes that it's not doing very well in terms of fighting off whatever the infection is, it'll create the fever, which is supposed to try to slow the growth of these bacteria or our own cells, which are making the viruses. I tell a story about how I got staph infection when I was in college. I had a really bad sunburn, and then I went into this jacuzzi, and I didn't realize that the water level was low and the water was dirty, and I got staph infection. And I didn't know it at first. I just thought I was getting sick, like I was getting like fevers. And it wasn't until like I broke out in this nasty rash. It's like the third time going to the doctor, and he's like, "Hey, I think you got staph infection. Like, were you ever in contact with anything that might have given you staph infection?" Yeah, it wasn't very fun. But the fever was there to try to help my body. So even though like we get a fever, like we it's uncomfortable, like you get headaches, you feel terrible. Part of that is your body's trying to fight off these invaders. The issue is if your body gets too hot with the fever, now the fever can actually cause damage to your body. That's why like once you get a fever up to a certain point, they're like you need to go to a doctor, you need to break the fever. Um, and like again, I'm not a doctor. I'm not going to tell you the exact temperature, but I would say like if you have a fever and you're sick, it's not necessarily bad until you start getting into some of those big triple digit numbers. You start getting up to like, 102, 101, 103, 104. Like now it's like okay, and maybe I need to, break this fever, take some Tylenol, um, go see the doctor. So